In this video, I'm going to quickly show you how you can use GarageBand to record a higher quality audio track. Whether you are using that for a solo podcast, a higher quality track for your YouTube video, or for a multi-speaker podcast that you're recording in person. So the reason I'm using GarageBand is because it's a built-in software that comes on all iOS devices. So in theory, you could use iPhone or iPad to do the same thing, but I highly recommend using desktop when you have the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to open up GarageBand on your desktop. You're going to see an option for empty project, hopefully, and then you're going to hit choose, and then choose this option that says mic or line and hit create. Now, one of the first things that I always do every time is make sure to turn this metronome click off, and then make sure to turn this 1, 2, 3, 4 thing off, and then hit this little, caret icon, and then you're basically going to hit time. So now you can, as you're recording, you can see how long you're recording for and things like that. Now, the other thing, if you come down over here and look at the recording settings, you're going to see the input. For me, I am using a Scarlett 4th gen audio interface. I highly recommend it. If you have a really high quality mic, like a Shure SM7B, it allows you to get, every bit of the quality out of it, versus when I was using something like a Shure, Shure, I think it was Shure X2U, that interface that was provided by Shure to connect to your laptop, it was making it seem like I wasn't using this mic at all. So you want to make sure you're using a high quality audio interface. If you have a USB mic, that probably plugs right in and, you're good to go. But basically choose whatever option that you have there. If you are using an XLR mic like this and you are connected to the Focusrite Scarlett 4th gen, then basically you just want to make sure that the right input is selected. Okay, so once you have the right input selected, I'm just going to make sure that none of these things are actually on or turned up. I'm going to leave this on, but you could technically switch that off if you wanted to, if you were using a high quality mic already, but I usually leave that on. And then as you can see, this green bar here can be kind of deceiving. So it's not, when you actually hit the record button, I'm going to go ahead and do so. So when I hit record here, as you see these waveforms kind of, forming, you would think to yourself, oh, this would be much taller, right? The sound that it should be picking up should be much higher. But don't rack your brain over this, because what's going to happen is it never goes much beyond this. So you're never going to get like that huge amplitude that you see on something like Descript, amplifying the waveforms, or even in something like a Premiere Pro. So what you really have to do is just make sure to go back and listen. And then the really nice thing is that this is a very good gauge right here, this green bar. And then you also, when you have something like an audio interface, so the Focusrite, I can look at it right now and I can see on the first knob how high this, that same green bar is going. So if it was just barely flickering when I'm talking, I know I got to turn the gain up. And what's really nice compared to something like a USB microphone is, you have limited gain control. So with a Focusrite, you're able to really crank that up and get the high quality sound, that you want. And then, we've been recording for a bit, so I'm going to basically hit stop here. All right, hit the stop record button. And then you also hit the space bar or hit the play button to stop it from continuing to go. And then the first thing that you want to do is come over to File and hit Save. Now, when you have this option, you're basically just going to name it something. So test, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to, type some things here, and then I'm going to hit save. Okay. So what that does is it saves the file, the project file that I'm working on in the respective folder. This does not mean that you have exported the actual audio file that you need yet. So what you're going to do is hit share, hit export song to disk, and then, you can rename things a little bit here, but I also like to move it over to my downloads folder because I'm not going to find it in my music and GarageBand. So you just make sure to click, I'm not going to do it right now, but click downloads and then basically hit export. And then what this does is it exports that file to the folder. Now, let me actually go and show you one more time what that looked like, because I like to actually export it as a WAV file. But if you wanted to, as an MP3, you can totally do that as well. If you don't have storage limits or issues with, what you're working on and things like that, especially if your recordings aren't that long, I would recommend going with WAV, uncompressed 24-bit, and then basically go ahead and hit export. And so then you can go find that file. I typically drag and drop that into my Premiere Pro, and I sync it up with my camera footage from the Sony FX30. Now, if I was doing a podcast here with, let's say, 2 speakers, right? One thing that I would need to do is make sure that the second mic is connected into the audio interface. And so I have, 2 slots here available. I would plug that in. And then basically what you would do is hit track, hit new track with duplicate settings, or you could just hit new track, and then you would kind of follow the same procedure here. Like here, I'm gonna hit that. You would hit mic or line, and then as you can see in track 2 here, I could basically come down to input and I would select the second one, right? And so the second one, if there was something connected, you would be seeing, that moving over here. So basically, you would need your laptop, you would need the microphones, and you would need an audio interface when you are recording a podcast in person. To get around all of this, you could use something like a Zoom H6 or a PodTrack recorder that just records directly into it. So you don't need your computer, but typically you can get kind of a higher quality option sometimes when you do it this way. So just wanted to show you, because if you don't use something like GarageBand, you might use Descript, you might use another paid tool. I used to use Adobe Audition, but then, I mainly just use Adobe Premiere Pro now. But on that, I don't really record into it, right? I have to record into somewhere else. So you can do that with Riverside, with Descript. That's great too. But if you are mainly looking for a free option that you already have access to, GarageBand is perfect for tinkering with that stuff and then basically seeing, do I enjoy this? Am I following? Am I consistent? And then you can invest in more tools if you need to. But a lot of times you'll find that it does the job, and you might be using this for a lot of time to come once you have figured it out. So again, I don't really edit inside of GarageBand, right? You just saw that I basically record the raw track and then I export it, and then I'm going to edit in, the Adobe Premiere Pro, or if you are using something like a Riverside or Descript, you can do it in there. But yeah, that's how I mainly use GarageBand, is just for the recording. So I hope this was useful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you on the next one.